القصة هي قصة النهايات السياسية.
Good afternoon, you're watching the English newscast on Future Television. I'm Lena Tamim and these are the news trending today. At least 717 people are killed and over 800 are injured in a stampede at the annual Hajj pilgrimage. Prime Minister Tamam Slam takes off to New York to participate in the 70th UN General Assembly meeting, where he is set to meet with senior Arab and foreign officials. And German Chancellor Angela Merkel calls for a permanent process for a fair distribution of refugees in EU member states as thousands continue to arrive in the Balkans. At least 717 people have been killed in a stampede at the annual Hajj pilgrimage. Saudi Arabia's Civil Defense Directorate said at least 805 other pilgrims were injured in the stampede, which took place in Mina on the outskirts of the holy city of Mecca. The injured have reportedly been evacuated to 4 different hospitals in the Mina region. The Lebanese Hajj mission says no Lebanese were among the casualties. Today's incident is the deadliest Hajj stampede since 2006, when at least 346 pilgrims were killed. Some 10,000 Lebanese Muslims had stood on Mount Arafat on Wednesday on the climax of the annual Hajj pilgrimage to Islam's holiest site, a day ahead of Eid al-Adha. About 2 million people from around the world have traveled to Saudi Arabia for Hajj this year. Grand Mufti Sheikh Abdel Latif Daryan says Lebanon needs an effective public administration system to increase citizen satisfaction. Speaking during a sermon on the morning of the first day of Eid al-Adha in Muhammad al-Amin Mosque in downtown Beirut, Daryan lamented that political crises in the country were multiplying. State institutions were crippled, and there is a failure to elect a president in addition to government dysfunction. He also said industrialists and traders were warning against choking Beirut and voiced his concern for the state and the republic. Daryan expressed fear that Lebanon will be shaken by a kind of Arab Spring in light of a narrow and blocked horizons, and called for the establishment of a good public administration. He also called for the adoption of basic fixed rules to deal with unresolved issues that have been plaguing the country, adding that solutions can only evolve through constitutional amendments and dialogue. The Mufti underscored the need to stand by the government and support it throughout these difficult moments. Prime Minister Tamam Slam has departed to New York this morning to participate in the 70th UN General Assembly meeting, where he is set to meet with senior Arab and foreign officials. Sources familiar with Salam's itinerary said he was expected to meet with French President François Hollande and senior Saudi, Qatari and other Arab officials. The sources say Salam will deliver a speech before the UN General Assembly on September 30th. The address will focus on the need to end Lebanon's presidential vacuum and ask for help in coping with the Syrian refugee crisis. Besides his speech before the UN General Assembly, Salam is set to make 3 other addresses, one during his participation in an anti-terrorism summit, one on conflicts and sustainable development, and one during the meeting of the International Support Group for Lebanon. 4 people were injured when a gas cylinder explosion ripped through a watch store in the eastern Beirut suburb of Hazmiye. The national news agency said the store owner, Farid Milki, was among the casualties. Syrian government forces have used newly arrived Russian warplanes to bomb ISIS fighters in Aleppo province in northern Syria in an attempt to break a siege on a nearby airbase. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says airstrikes that began during the week were accompanied by ground attacks near the Kreiris airbase in the east of Aleppo, where government troops have long been holed up. A recent Russian military buildup in Syria to bolster Damascus has alarmed the United States and Western European countries. Pope Francis will deliver the first papal address ever to the U.S. Congress. More details coming up next. Stay with us. Welcome back. You are watching the English newscast. At least 25 people have been killed as suicide bombers struck a mosque in Yemen's capital, Sana'a, in an attack targeting Shia worshippers. Dozens others were wounded in the blast, which ripped through the Balili Mosque, where Houthi Shia rebels who control Sana'a go to pray. It came as worshippers marked Eid al-Adha, the feast of the sacrifice, the most important holiday of the Islamic calendar. ISIS reportedly claimed responsibility for the attack. Yazidi groups and the Kurdish regional government have requested that the International Criminal Court opens an investigation into the genocide perpetrated by the Islamic State against the Yazidi people in northern Iraq. They submitted documents to the ICC in The Hague, which included allegations that 5,000 to 7,000 Islamic State fighters involved are foreign nationals from the ICC member countries. The Islamic State group reportedly said it wants to eliminate the Yazidi religion.
Document to outline these crimes show that these actions amount to genocide and demonstrate clearly and legally that the ICC does.
Where we submitted a document that asks the International Criminal Court to open a case, a preliminary examination of the Yazidi genocide files. So we've presented the evidences that show that a crime was committed by the what's so-called Islamic State, and also we show the evidences that the members of the countries who are members in the ICC are sizable. Between 5,000 to 7,000 members are from the foreign nationals, and they were part of the systematic genocide that was committed against the Yazidi people. And based on these evidences, we are asking the International Criminal Court to open this case.
Well, what we have seen is solidarity and support from around the world, because ISIS is brutal and ISIS is not liked by any except for those who think alike. But the rest of the world have shown their solidarity and support, and we are in touch with foreign ministers around the world who have shown us their support, but this is not enough. Support is welcome and appreciated, but we need to do more practical steps in order to help ICC to get what they want to start this investigation.
Moving on to Europe, thousands of migrants streamed through the Balkans as German Chancellor Angela Merkel warned after an emergency summit that Europe still has to get to grips with its biggest post-war refugee crisis. French officials, meanwhile, said a young African was killed by a Channel Tunnel train while trying to get to Britain, just the latest in thousands of deaths this year among people desperate to start a new life in Europe. Hungarian police announced 10,046 migrants, a new daily record, had arrived on Wednesday. Merkel also said that President Bashar al-Assad should be involved in any Syrian peace talks amid pressure from the rising number of refugees from Syria. The comments by the leader of Europe's biggest political and economic power come amid increasing signs that Western powers, who were once insistent on Assad's departure, may be softening their positions in a bid to end the war. Thousands of migrants are spending the Muslim festival of Eid on the road as they cross Croatia en route to what they hope will be a better life in Europe.
على تعزيز الرقابة
and I'm far from my home, maybe 4,000, 5,000 meters, I don't know, kilometers, I don't know. We are in Croatia now, and my mother isn't here. My mother isn't here. It's in my country. I don't know.
Since 4 years was Eid. Now there is no Eid, because everything about Eid and relative to Eid is difficult to visit, to do in Eid.
Across the Atlantic, Pope Francis plans to deliver the first papal address ever to the U.S. Congress, speaking to Republican majority legislators deeply at odds with President Obama on many of the same issues the leaders addressed at the White House. On the first day of his U.S. tour, Francis introduced himself with a bracing message on climate change, immigration, and poverty that ranged from the pastoral to the political. The Pope has urged an audience of U.S. bishops to aid immigrants from Latin American countries. The pontiff was speaking at a prayer service in Washington, D.C.
Hundreds of bishops from across the U.S. gathered at Washington's Cathedral of St. Matthew the Apostle to bask in the presence of their Pope, but also to hear a gentle lecture. The pontiff acknowledged the difficulties church leaders have faced in dealing with the sex abuse scandal, but told them they must ensure it never happens again.
I know how much the wounds of these last few years have weighed on your spirit, and I have joined my efforts to yours in the efforts of succoring those victims. And when we bring succor, then the victims are healed, and we have to hope that such crimes will never repeat themselves.
He also urged them to do everything possible to help immigrants coming to the U.S. and gave them his personal thanks, not as the Pope, but as a pastor from Argentina.
You are now facing this long stream of Latin immigration, not only as the Bishop of Rome, but also as a pastor coming from the South. I feel the need to thank you. These people will enrich America and its church.
The bishops returned the affection, interrupting his speech with frequent applause and finishing with a standing ovation.
As the world's largest annual gathering of people takes place in the holy city of Mecca for the Islamic pilgrimage, a museum hopes to highlight the gentleness of Islam that focuses on culture and education instead of war. Peace be upon you, Prophet is a museum in Mecca documenting life during the time of the Prophet Muhammad and features nearly 1,500 artifacts from the ancient days, as well as a model of the city. The museum director, Dr. Nasser Zahrani, says he wants to paint a realistic picture of everyday life during the Prophet's lifetime to convey the message that Islam is really more about peace than war. He said Islam and religion has come to preserve rather than kill the lives of people. Prophet Muhammad was instructed to read his message, and Islam is a religion of education, of revival, of promotion, and culture. This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a recap of our top stories. At least 717 people are killed and over 800 are injured in a stampede at the annual Hajj pilgrimage. Prime Minister Tamam Slam takes off to New York to participate in the 70th UN General Assembly meeting, where he is set to meet with senior Arab and foreign officials. And German Chancellor Angela Merkel calls for a permanent process for a fair distribution of refugees in EU member states as thousands continue to arrive in the Balkans. Those are your top stories for today. I'm Linda Tamim, and on behalf of our team, I wish everyone celebrating a very happy Eid.
القصة هي قصة النهايات السياسية